you ready?
I'm ready.
Am I ready?
You're ready.
Is everybody ready?
We're ready.
Hey, Lynn.
Hey, D.
We are right here.
Why do we always have to tell our location? What are we talking about today, D?
We are really excited to feature an organization called Children's Center for Hope and Healing.
Yeah.
And we're kind of picking up where we left off from the last few episodes, talking about sexual abuse and sexual assault. Yeah.
Just a couple episodes ago, we had rape response on our show.
Mm-hmm.
Is this a show?
I don't think so. Well, I mean, maybe.
On our podcast. I don't know what we are. It's fine. And everything about their episode was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. We learned so much, and we highly suggest going back to listen to those episodes if you have not yet.
Yeah.
But I remember distinctly thinking while we were in the middle of it, and I never got the chance to ask. And after it was over and we're editing and all things, I kept thinking, because they are there for people age 13 and above.
Yeah.
And I was like, what about the ones under 13? What do they do? Where do they go? And it just so happens that I had an email from an organization, a local organization who loves what we're doing, and they requested to be featured on one of our episodes. And I had told them, next season, maybe we're booked out this season. And then we did the rape response episode, and our schedule changed a little bit, and it just worked out that we had an opening and we could feature them. And it made sense too, because now we have part 1, part 2, part 3, essentially, of the sexual abuse, sexual assault series.
And all have different purposes.
Vantage points.
Do you want to just tee up the organization a little bit? Like, tell us a little bit of, like, a preview before we get going.
So Children's Center for Hope and Healing is quite different than rape response in that they are really there for the well-being and the future hope of these kiddos and their families that have experienced sexual abuse. They're not as much in the legislative realm. They're not as much in the judicial realm. They're not as much on the advocacy side or the even in-school education side. They're really there for the therapy and the health and healing of these kids and their families. Yeah. They seem like a really nurturing group of people, and they're really, really focused on making sure that these kids have futures that are not plagued because of the trauma that they've experienced. Yeah. So I got to sit down with Susan, and she's the executive director over at Children's Center, and hear from her. And she is lovely. So lovely. Make sure you check out our Instagram and Facebook pages, because she does have a little real life example in our conversation. Oh, I guess if you're watching this on the video, then you'll see it there too. But she gives us a little, I'm not going to give it away, but a little surprise. And you want to see what it looks like, because it's amazing. It's amazing. So make sure you check that out. All right, let's hear from Susan with Children's Center for Hope and Healing.
Let's do it.
Budding.
My name is Susan Sticka. I'm the executive director of the Children's Center for Hope and Healing. We're an agency that provides counseling services to people who've been traumatized by sexual abuse. We cover 13 counties in Northeast Georgia. Our main office is in Gainesville.
Oh, so you have more than one office?
We do. We have a second office in Forsyth County in Cumming.
Okay.
And we have had some satellite offices that we're trying to reopen in Cornelia and Jackson County.
Okay. And you said people who have experienced sexual abuse.
Specifically childhood sexual abuse.
Okay. And you cater to just children or adults as well?
We work mostly with children, but we also work with adults who've never had therapy for their childhood sexual abuse. And they tend to carry a lot of things into their adulthood, maybe have gone to therapy before, but they don't understand why they're not getting better. So we specialize with the trauma therapy, and they're able to become better functioning, have better relationships, get rid of some of the depression and anxiety that they've had throughout their lives.
Okay. All right. So tell us a little bit about the statistics, local numbers, things like that?
Mm-hmm. The statistics are really hard to identify because a lot of people don't share that they've been sexually abused. Most of the statistics say that between 1 in 4 and 1 in 6 girls are sexually abused before the age of 18, and between 1 in 6 and 1 in 10 boys are sexually abused before the age of 18. So that's a tremendous number of children that experience childhood sexual abuse.
Right. And what do you guys typically see? Who are the perpetrators?
Interestingly, the perpetrators are not usually strangers. And I think that's one of the things that always has bothered me is we teach our children about stranger danger, but it's not really about stranger danger. It's about people you know danger. So about 84 to 90% of people know who the perpetrator is or who it is that offended them. Maybe about a third of them are family members. Not always the adults in the family. A lot of sexual abuse happens from older, stronger kids. And so we see probably 30 to 40% of the kids we see have been sexually abused by another child.
Oh, wow. Now, regardless of if the perpetrator is a child or an adult, do you guys study or keep up with, have those people typically experience sexual abuse as well?
We do check, and I would say probably 60% of the kids that sexually abuse other kids have been sexually abused, but almost all of them have had some kind of trauma. Sometimes it's physical abuse, neglect, witnessing domestic violence is a big one. So yeah, the kids that sexually abuse have also had trauma. That's just their way of expressing themselves or expressing their hurt and their anger and their fear.
So it's a vicious cycle.
It's a big cycle, and that's what our goal is to stop that cycle of childhood sexual abuse.
What do you think is one of the most shocking things to you in doing this work, the things that you've seen?
Well, I know I never say I've seen it all because as soon as you say that, you see something else. I think one of the things that kind of surprises me is that the parents don't always believe their children.
Right.
And I guess that's understandable because they're afraid of breaking up families. I think one of the best things I've seen, though, is how kids are so resilient. People are so resilient that they can get past all of this and they can go on to lead really healthy and productive lives.
Yeah.
So that's the best thing.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so Susan, tell us about your story. How did you find yourself in this line of work?
I started out as an art teacher, and I got a job. I didn't like teaching, though. Once I did my student teaching, I was like, this is not for me. So I ended up with a job at an adolescent and child psychiatric unit, and that was way back when kids would stay in the hospital for 6 weeks to 6 months. And so they had teachers in the psychiatric units, and I was an art teacher. I taught art and social studies.
Wow.
And when I was teaching the kids art, I realized that they weren't just learning about lines and shapes and colors. They were really expressing themselves through art, and they were getting some things off of their chests that they needed to talk about.
Wow.
And I finally figured out what I was doing was actually art therapy. So I went back to school and became an art therapist. I worked a long, long time in community mental health, but all the people that we saw that had mental illnesses, depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, even schizophrenia, had a lot of trauma in their lives. So I would say probably at least 80% of the people I saw, maybe more, had experienced trauma.
Wow.
A lot of it sexual trauma. So then I moved to Georgia about 20 years ago. Started working in a women's prison. And again, almost all the women that I worked with who were incarcerated had also experienced abuse, especially sexual abuse. And it just became this vicious cycle where I was like working with all these people that had all these severe illnesses. But I wanted to learn to catch it before they became incarcerated or mentally ill. And that's what really drew me to the Children's Center for Hope and Healing, because what we want to do is to stop that cycle before it starts. We want to be able to, get the children so that they can get healed and recover before they end up getting in trouble legally, getting addicted to drugs, becoming mentally ill, having so many problems that a lot of people that have sexual abuse have.
Right.
So that's the really cool thing about working at the Children's Center. We catch it before it turns into a chronic illness.
Wow. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So how did the Children's Center for Hope and Healing start? Do you know?
Yeah. The Children's Center for Hope and Healing started in 1984.
Okay.
There were a group of DFACS workers, mental health counselors, and people from the judicial system that kind of got together, and they're like, we don't see anything for kids who come through our systems that have been abused, that have been sexually abused specifically. There's nothing really in the community. So a lot of them started volunteering to do counseling. They also did a study in the community to find out really what the scope of the problem was. And they found out that it was a huge scope, and there was definitely a need for the service. So they were able to get some grants. They were able to incorporate, become a 503CB. 503CB nonprofit. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I always get the 3 and the C mixed.
Yes. And I shouldn't, because I say it all the time. So they started the Children's Center for Hope and Healing. It was initially called Family Relationships.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
All right.
They started out just working with children and adolescents who'd been sexually abused.
And the adults were people who worked in the judicial system in some capacity, or the legal system in some capacity, or with children in some capacity.
They worked with, Department of Children and Family Services would work with a lot of kids who had been sexually abused and were removed from their homes.
Okay.
Mental health counselors, of course, worked with a lot of people who had been abused. And then the judicial system saw them coming through the court system.
Yeah.
Saw the kids having to testify against their perpetrator, and saw all the problems that it was causing for these kids.
Right.
So they thought, we need to do something.
Yeah. So
And
it was
did.
professionals who were seeing this in their profession, who then started. Okay.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay. So 1984.
1984. They finally incorporated in 1986. And like I said, they were working with just kids at that time. But when you work with kids, you work with parents. And so they started seeing the whole cycle of sexual abuse. The mothers had also been sexually abused. And so the mothers also had problems, and they had even more problems dealing with it when their children were abused. So we started a women's program so that both the children and their parents, their mothers, could recuperate and recover at the same time. Continuing that process, they found out that a lot of the fathers had also been sexually abused, so they opened a men's program. Today, we just lump the men and women together in an adult services program.
Yeah.
But yeah, some adults don't tell until they're really old. We've had our oldest person was 78.
Wow. For the first time.
For the first time.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And then, like I said, they started working with these families, and they found out that a lot of the kids had been sexually abused by other kids, oftentimes within the family. So in 1996, we started a program called Pathfinder, Project Pathfinder, which is for children and adolescents who have sexual behavior problems, starting at age 6, when usually it's more of a reactive behavior. They've had something done to them, or they've seen something and they start acting the same way. So teaching them what appropriate boundaries are, what the rules are about touching, how to manage your emotions so that when you get upset, that's not what you act out, that's not what you do. And then we also were getting adolescents who maybe had also been charged with sex offenses because they had acted out on someone else. The Project Pathfinder program is really interesting. There aren't a lot of them in the area, in the whole state. I think I know of 3 that work with kids who have sexual behavior problems. But when kids get treated for those problems, it's 98% effective.
Wow.
So the kids that we see in that program, hardly any of them ever go on to reoffend. 98% success rate in that program.
So when they start that program, how long does it take to get through it? Are there like different stages you go through and reach, or is it like a lifetime, like the whole time you're a child, you come to therapy?
No, not at all.
Okay.
That'd be terrible, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I don't know. I love therapy. So.
With the little ones, when they're like 6, 7, and they're just acting out, it might take 12 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So it's not that long.
And 98% effectiveness.
Yep. And
wow.
yes. And for the adolescents, it kind of depends on what the behavior is. So if they've actually broken the law, it could take 12 to 18 months.
Okay.
And it's pretty intensive. They come in once a week for individual therapy. They come in once a week for group therapy. And then we also work with the families as well to help protect them.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So when did you start with the Children's Center?
I started 5 years ago in 2018.
Okay.
I came in as the clinical director because that's who I am. I'm a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple of years ago, our executive director left and asked me if I would be willing to take over as the executive director. I don't think I knew what I was getting into.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the role you're in now.
That's what I'm in now.
Okay. And you've seen a lot since you've done multiple roles within the organization. How do they differ, your roles?
Well, I'll tell you, the therapists that we have are like saints. They're just wonderful. They're such compassionate people. They have such a love for children and such a passion for what they do. They're great people. They work really hard.
Yeah.
We have therapists from all different areas. We have one therapist that works primarily with the adults and older adolescents. We have 2 therapists that are play therapists. So they're working on their certification as play therapists. When kids come in and they're like 4, 5, 6, 7, they don't necessarily have the verbal skills to process therapy that way. So they use play to process their therapy and their trauma.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's very effective.
Yeah. And then as executive director, you get to hire all of these people who do these roles?
Yes, and get to work with them every day, which is great.
Let's talk about the Children's Center for Hope and Healing now. How does your group and organization get in the community to let everybody know that you're here?
We get most of our referrals from the child advocacy centers.
Okay.
So when there's a allegation of child sexual abuse, it's usually made to either to the police or sheriff or to DFACS. Then the children go to the child advocacy centers for a forensic interview where they do discovery to see if it's actually happened and what's happened.
Okay.
But the child advocacy centers in our area don't really do counseling, so they refer the children to us for the counseling part of it.
Okay.
We also get referrals from DFACS oftentimes. We get referrals from the schools, from other therapists, from community mental health centers. Sometimes word of mouth. I think the agency has a really good reputation in the community.
Yeah.
And people know about us.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how because we don't really advertise.
Right.
But they hear about us, and so they refer us sometimes themselves.
Okay. So you don't really get walk-ins or people calling you up and saying,
We've had a couple walk-ins, but very rarely.
Okay. So in our previous episodes, we interviewed Rape Response, and we got to hear all about how they do things. And so with Rape Response, it's up to the survivor if they want to pursue anything legally from what they explained to us. How is that different for you guys?
We may refer them to Rape Response for advocacy, and then also the district attorney's offices have victims advocates at all of them.
Okay.
So we sometimes we'll work in conjunction, but our focus is therapy.
And okay, so your focus is therapy, and you don't, if they choose to pursue legal action, you just refer them to someone else who can help with that.
Yes, if a child discloses to us that they've been sexually abused or there's been additional sexual abuse than what we know, we do have to report. We're mandated reporters.
Okay.
So we do have to report it to DFACS, and then DFACS kind of takes the lead from there.
Yeah. Okay. Wow, that's different. That's very interesting. So your main focus is just the therapy, helping the child get healthy so that they can lead a successful and productive life.
Absolutely. We work with the child and their families.
And the families.
The families are really important in
Yeah.
keeping kids safe and also in learning how to parent a kid who's had trauma.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's a different thing.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit from the parent's perspective. What do you see being some major hurdles for families that have to deal with something like this?
There's so many hurdles. It's it can go one way or the other. Sometimes families they just don't want to talk about it. They'll send their child to counseling, but they don't want to be involved. They don't want to talk about it because they don't want to upset their child. And so we work with those families to know that it's important to learn how to talk with their child about it, learn how to support their child, because it shouldn't be something shameful in the family. It should be something that you can talk about, that you can support one another through. So we work with that. Sometimes we work with families that are not, that they don't exactly know why their child is acting out. Why is their child waking up in the middle of the night screaming? Why is their child refusing to go to school? Why is their child sneaking out at night and going with strange boys? Why is that? Are they just being bad kids? And so we have to teach the parents and the families, these are all trauma symptoms. And when we work through the traumas, these symptoms go away.
Wow. Okay. That's really important.
Yeah, very important.
And I can see how, as a parent, hearing something like that might just make you want to throw up. Like There's no other response other than just huge amounts of grief and regret and suffering.
Yes.
And so trying to avoid all of that feels natural.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot of families, a lot of parents feel shame because they didn't protect their kids, but you can't protect them from everybody. You can do the best you can.
Right.
And you can learn new skills of ways to keep them safer.
Right.
But you can't be with them 24/7, unfortunately.
Right. Wow. Sounds like you guys have a lot of grace and compassion for these families.
Oh, yeah.
They're experiencing very hard things.
They are going through very hard things, and we want to help them, support them to get through it.
Yeah.
And go on to have happy lives.
Right. Yeah. Okay. What are your programs that you offer right now? I know you talked about a couple of them, but what all do you offer for your clients right now?
Right now we have 4 basic programs. The first is, of course, the Victim Services Program for children and adolescents who have been sexually abused, and then also for adults who've experienced childhood sexual abuse. For the women right now, we have a group that we ask women to attend ahead of time. It's a 12-week work group where the adults can learn how to talk about the abuse. They learn a lot of coping skills so they can talk about it better. And then when they finish that 12-week group, then they go on to individual therapy. The children and adolescents who've experienced childhood sexual abuse will usually go into an individual therapy right away, individual and family. But sometimes we do group therapy. Depends on how many kids we have.
Okay. Yeah.
We also have Project Pathfinder, which we've talked about a little bit, and that's for kids between the ages of 6 and 18 who have been problematic sexual behaviors.
Yeah.
Finally, we have a special program for people in the community who speak Spanish.
Okay.
We call it the Latino Victim Services Program. So we have a bilingual therapist who's very familiar with the Hispanic culture. And we also have a Spanish interpreter who's also familiar with the culture that can help some of us who don't speak Spanish work with the community that really needs it badly.
Yeah.
They've been very marginalized, and there aren't any services that I know of in the area that provides free counseling just for people who speak Spanish and have sexual abuse in the family. Yeah. Wow. So that's a really cool program.
Yes, that's amazing. So if someone hears this podcast and they want to take advantage of your services, can they call you guys?
They can call us or they can go on our website.
Yep.
There are referral forms on our website that they can fill in.
Yeah. Okay.
And just click the button.
Okay. What is your website?
It's www.hopeandhealingga.org.
Okay. How have you guys grown and adapted since you've been executive director?
What we're trying to do, the problem is so huge. We don't really have enough resources. So one of my jobs is looking for additional resources. I'm always looking for resources.
Right.
So that we can get more therapists so that kids don't have to sit on our waiting lists for months
Yeah.
before they get treatment.
Yeah.
Because the sooner people can get in for treatment, the quicker they can have the treatment will be done.
Right. Yeah.
So that's one of the things that we're working on. I don't want kids to be on a waiting list. I want them to come right in when they need it.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've also, continued to provide our therapists with additional training. We want them to be up to date with the best and most efficient training that there is available.
Yeah.
So our therapists are trained. Everybody's trained in trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, which is TFCBT. And we have several of our therapists that are trained in eye movement desensitization reprocessing, so EMDR. And we try to keep up with whatever is new and upcoming and is evidence-based in training.
Yeah, yeah. That's incredible.
And I'm doing the best I can to keep the therapists we have.
Yeah.
Because they're good.
Yeah.
And I want our clients to get really good therapists when they
Right.
come in to see us.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have a story, like a major story that stands out to you when you think about the work that you've done that's like your heartbeat story?
There's a few. There are a lot of stories, but because of confidentiality, I can't really share too much.
Yes, of
because
course.
I don't want someone to listen and
Right.
all that they're talking about me.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
but I have some overall stories. I think when I first started working there, one of the things that really touched me, when children first come in, they're kind of scared and withdrawn and they hide behind their parent and they don't want to go into the office. But after a time or two coming into therapy, they don't want to leave.
Oh, that's awesome.
And they're jumping down the halls and smiling and laughing and excited to go get their first snack. So just seeing the progress that's made and how quickly it's made with kids is just really heartwarming.
Yeah.
And then I did bring something that we do with our clients because I thought it would be great to have a show
Yes.
and tell, right?
Please.
So one of our therapists that works mostly with the adults, when she finishes a group, she works with the women to make kintsugi bowls.
Okay.
So kintsugi is an ancient Japanese art. It started with one of the shoguns who broke his favorite teacup, and he wanted it replaced or repaired because he really liked the teacup. So he sent it off to a craftsman to repair it, but the craftsman just kind of stapled together with metal staples, and it worked, but it just didn't look the same. So what he did is called in one of his finest craftsmen and said, "Can you please make this new for me? Can you make it whole and make it look beautiful again?" And so the craftsman glued all the pieces together with gold.
Oh, wow.
And once the gold was in there and the pieces were pulled back together with gold, it made it stronger and more beautiful than it was ever before. So that's what we help our clients learn about, is when they come in, they may be shattered into a million pieces. Hopefully not that many, but sometimes they are. And what we work with them on and what we help them do is to pull their pieces together and to pull them together with gold, making it so that when they leave, they're stronger and more beautiful than they ever recognized that they were.
Wow.
So I thought that would be a kind of a cool story.
Yes, that's gorgeous. So they do this as an activity together.
Yes.
Oh, wow. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have to get pictures of that because that's
Yeah.
beautiful. Okay. What is your vision for the future?
Well, of course, the vision is that no children are ever going to be sexually abused again. And the whole cycle of childhood sexual abuse will be stopped. I think we're making a dent in it.
Yeah.
And definitely for the people that we see, we can make a dent in it. So overall, that would be the vision. Realistically, I would like our agency to be able to see all the kids that need to be seen.
So you're full.
We are usually full, yes.
And you can't get to everybody as quickly as you'd like to. Like
Correct.
that's a recurring issue for you guys.
It is, yes.
So do you want your agency to grow?
Yes.
Okay.
Not too big, but
Yeah.
because we want to be able to maintain the quality of the services.
Yeah.
But we want it to grow enough so that we can see everybody that needs to be seen.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. So do you have a plan for that for the near future? Can you reveal things?
We have a fundraiser coming up soon. We do a lot of fundraisers.
Yes.
Trying to get funding in the community.
Yeah.
We're always looking for volunteers and donors.
You are.
Always, yeah.
What kind of volunteers?
We need people that are willing to volunteer to be on our board of directors. We've had people that do some things in their community where they can raise some money. We need things donated to us like supplies, art supplies, or play therapy supplies, office supplies. When our children leave from each session, they get a snack, which is kind of a closing thing. And it's also because a lot of the kids that come to us, they don't have food very available.
Yes.
So they also get a snack. So donations of snacks, helping out with office work, just whatever.
Yeah, whatever you guys need at the
Yeah.
time. Yeah. So do you guys have a lot of partners in the communities, or is that something that you're striving to get more?
We're working on getting community partners.
Okay. Yeah. And that would be like businesses partnering with you.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
We're looking for sponsors, of course.
Okay.
Business sponsors.
And then do you have an annual like gala, banquet,
We do,
anything
yes.
like that? Yeah.
In fact, our annual gala is this Saturday.
Oh gosh, it's coming up.
Coming up.
My goodness. So by the time this airs, it will be in the past.
Mhm. We have a wine tasting event in the spring.
Yeah.
And-
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
And each year we have a trauma conference to provide education for other therapists in the community. And we're going to have 2 trauma speakers, trauma therapists coming in to do speaking.
So you guys put this conference on, and it's for local therapists to come.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, that's
Yes.
incredible.
Yeah, it's
I
really
love
cool.
that. Yeah.
Because we want everybody to be trauma informed
Yeah.
and trauma aware.
Yes.
And be able to do trauma therapy.
Yeah. And then that puts them in touch with you guys. So if they ever need to refer, there you are.
Yep.
Man, that's incredible. I
Yeah.
love that. Okay. So anything else specifically that you.
One of the things that I forgot to say is all of our services are free of charge. So no clients ever pay, no families ever pay. And most of the time they wouldn't have the money in the community to pay for a private therapist. So that's, I think, one of the cool things about the children's centers.
Yeah.
It's a free service for
Yeah, yeah.
people that need it.
We'll end with, if you could say one thing to our neighborhood, it can be a misconception, lie, encouragement, or shocking information that you want everyone to know about the humans you serve, what would you say?
I think one of the most important things is to remember that just because someone has experienced childhood sexual abuse, that does not mean that they're going to have problems their entire life. That recovery is possible and that children are super resilient. Sometimes they just need some help along the way. And if they need any of that, we would be happy and proud to help them.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
It's so good.
Yes, Susan. Amazing, amazing interview. I love, and I don't know if it conveyed on the camera. My hope is it did, but she was just so warm. And it kind of came across too, like once I found out that she was a therapist and an art therapist,
Yeah.
and she's worked with children, she's worked with women in the prison system. I'm like, well, of course, you're so warm, and I want to be closer to you.
Nuzzle in.
Uh-huh. All right, let's talk about some of our
Takeaways.
aha moments. So many.
I think I had more on this episode than I have in a lot of episodes.
Oh, really?
Maybe I was just really generous with my
Well,
thoughts.
well, go for it. Do it. Okay, what you got?
I was shocked to hear about the oldest person that had, what's the word? Revealed.
Yeah.
I was shocked that the oldest person that had revealed sexual abuse in their life was 78 years old, which I think, like, you're never too old.
Yeah.
Like, there's always health to be had.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's worth it.
Right. It's worth the peace, and what an inspiration that person is to other people
Yes.
who maybe are still living with this silent terror.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how old you are.
Yeah.
Like, you can, like you said, there's always health to be had. There's always remaining years, remaining days. Like, you can live free.
Yeah.
Okay, what else you got?
Well, which I think leads us to talking about why breaking cycles is so important. And I love that Susan talked about that the work that they're doing. And we've heard this from Rape Response, and probably everybody we talk to is highlighting this. We're trying to break the cycle of this pattern in generations. But how important it is for the work that they're doing specifically because of the age that they're dealing with. She said something about having a 98% success rate, or maybe success isn't the right term, but was it?
Well, it wasn't. She was saying they don't what's it called?
Re-enter or
They don't.
relapse?
Yes, but that's not the right word. But
Yeah.
yes, they don't have the same issues anymore. Like
Yeah.
98%. That's
Brilliant and beautiful.
That's almost 100%.
Right.
Let's round
why,
up.
Yeah. And I think that highlights why their work is so incredibly important. Like if a child can go to therapy and have those interactions and be healed, not only for themselves as individuals, but for how that will help them live a more successful and full life.
Right. Well, and on that note, too, for the families that she said, they get the child in there, it's a confirmed case, whatever, comes from DFACS or from wherever, and then they get the child in there, and of course, they want to help the child heal, but, it's a very tough situation for the family because they feel like they've failed their child or they failed to protect their child or whatever, and they get the parents in there and find out that the parents experienced the exact same thing,
Right.
and it's breaking those. It's not necessarily I wrote that yesterday, generational cycles, but it's not necessarily that the parents committed the crime.
Right. But that something may have been done to them, and then
Right.
something was done to their child.
Right.
And then on and on and on.
Right.
Because you don't learn how to stop it.
Right.
You don't learn how to develop the tools that you need to teach your children how to deal with it.
To deal with it, to see it, to protect against it, because your parents, their parents, the parents' parents didn't know what to do with it if they ever found out.
Right.
Didn't know what to do with it, didn't have the resources. Because, as far as, I'm not saying I've done all the research and the digging, but Children's Center is the only one that comes to mind that helps with this specific issue for children in our neighborhood.
Wow.
And again, I'm not saying it is the only one.
Right.
But like it's the first and the only one that I know of in all the research and talking and all the things that we've done. So it's not like there have been ample resources in the past.
Right.
And they opened the year I was born. So it's only
1921. Wow.
It's as old as I am. 38. Almost 39. They've almost been open for 40 years.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I wonder if
It
they'll do
seems
something
like-
for their 40th birthday.
Yeah, I'm sure they will.
Yeah.
It seems like for that to be the case, it seems like they're ahead of their time.
Yeah. Well, yes. Go ahead.
Well, no, you.
No, you.
No, you.
Please.
No, you.
Nope.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
You're going to forget.
No, I won't. I've got it written.
Okay. Well, it seems like the way they started. Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah.
The way they started with professionals,
Yeah.
seeing these things happening over and over and saying we have to do something about it. Isn't that everything that we are trying to talk about?
Yeah.
It's like follow your gut,
Yes.
follow your instincts, follow your intuition,
Mhm.
seek the best wholeness for everyone, and wherever your feet are planted, whatever you're seeing, that's your realm.
Yeah.
Do the thing.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Go.
So well said.
No, what were you going to say?
Mine is so much more cliche, but
Do it.
like you have a group of people who were in the trenches with children and seeing a need, and they said we have to do something about it.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't want to use the word convicting, but it's convicting in the sense of like, what are you involved in things where you are seeing needs? Number one, am I involved in things that I'm seeing needs? And then am I willing to do something about it?
Yeah.
And not just like kind of turn my eye
Yeah.
and continue in my comfortable life.
Right. What else you got?
I think I have an ending thought.
Okay.
So if you have any more.
I don't.
I have said this for a while, and mainly because probably of my background in education and just how my heart aches for children in bad situations, but children are always worth it, is just my heart cry. And not yes, for their individual person and their healing and wholeness, but also because of the impact that it's going to have on our society for generations to come. And so I'm so thankful for parents and teachers and people who are in the trenches and doing the hard work of helping and bringing healing to children, because it's worth it, and it always will be.
That's so good. And I really think too that you said it's gonna how it impacts our society and that person for generations to come. And just to take one person and think through what one person, that little person is going to grow up and become a person who functions. So whether they're a nurse or a doctor or a teacher or a airplane pilot or a trash truck guy or gal or whatever, they're either going to function healthily or unhealthily in their day to day. And then they are probably going to have children. And then they are going to have good days, lots of good days, healthy days, or lots of bad, unhealthy days. Everybody has a mixture, but like they're going to live in health and wholeness, or they're going to live in chaos and the unknowing of why they do the things they do due to this thing that happened to them. With their children looking, watching, experiencing them as a parent, and then grandchildren, and then those kids, and they're either going to know how to ask for help and get help for them and their kids and their grandkids, or they're going to probably subconsciously teach to you keep it all in.
Perpetuate the problem.
Yeah, you hold it all in. You deal with it. We all have hard things to deal with. Like, which side do you want to live on? So I love that thought. And I love that you're saying children are always worth it. But even, we've used this little example before. I explained to my kids, we're all 10-year-olds. I've been 10 almost 4 times. You've been 10 1.5 times or 1 time or whatever. So we're all little 10-year-olds just trying to figure it out. I have a little more experience than you do. And everybody has that inner child that was either helped when they needed help, protected when they needed protecting, or not. And so.
And what about that visual that she talked about with the Japanese technique? The broken bowl. It's so beautiful.
It was so beautiful. And it was really cool to like examine in person. And how she said the cup or the bowl or whatever was more beautiful than it was before. And so unique. And I think that just gives so much hope to anyone who has endured it that, things are crappy. And it wasn't supposed to be that way. And there's a mess to clean up now. But it doesn't have to stay that way.
Thanks so much for joining us on this episode of You Don't Know, a Wayfind Collective podcast. We'd love to hear your thoughts about this episode, so please feel free to reach out and give us some feedback. All links for today's episode can be found in our show notes. The Children's Center for Hope and Healing is a local mental health resource for survivors of childhood sexual abuse here in North Georgia. Anyone can request services at hopeandhealingga.org/referrals or call 770-532-6530. The National Sexual Assault Hotline is 1-800-656-4673. You can donate and find more resources directly on our site, wayfindco.com, and on our Facebook and Instagram social media accounts. Remember, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, so all of your donations are tax deductible. You can also donate to their cause and learn more about their work at hopeandhealingga.org. Today's episode was produced and narrated by Deanna West and Lindsay Migliori, with music by Smile High featuring Antoine Stanley. Show and video podcast graphics by Rebecca Williamson. Wayfind Collective is a crowd-funded nonprofit. Our mission is to learn what it truly means to love your neighbor as yourself, so we share their stories in order to evoke a culture of movement that seeks to bridge the gaps in our neighborhoods. Everything that we do is because of the generous support of many people just like you. So thank you from all of us on the Wayfind team for being a part of this project with us.